Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are and whenever you are. Welcome to the community live stream. My name is Chuck Tomasi, Senior Developer Evangelist at ServiceNow, and I am happy to be here. It is August 24th, 2020, and our topic today is approval summarizers. I'll get into those a little bit. This was inspired by one of your direct comments and questions. I think I even mentioned it offhand in an episode a couple of weeks ago and said, hey, we should cover that, because it hasn't been covered in a while. And this was one of those topics where, as I started to dig in, I got more information than I actually was looking for. I thought this would be a quick 10-minute topic. They never are they? There's always something more that you can see in there. Thank you for joining me. There's a whole bunch of people signing in on YouTube. I feel like I'm just hanging out with friends today, having a chat, and this is great. I love it. You can do so on YouTube. Go ahead and click the like button, the notification, so you get the notification. I believe I've got one here. I've probably got more than one here. Yeah, I've got stuff from news and webcams around the house, but I've got, whoa, that really threw the white balance off a little bit. But got notification on the phone that it is live. Actually, the notifications will show up 30 minutes ahead of time. So I suspect some of you are getting those, because it shows up on my device and says, hey, it's going to start in 30 minutes. Thank you, everybody, for joining in. Great to see you. Good to see the audio is working. A little bit loud on that microphone. Hopefully it's not distorted too badly. Got the traditional bow tie on. That's my thing. So happy to be here. Join on YouTube. Also, we do present this on Twitch. I got a notification if you looked at my phone on that as well. We do this as Twitch. Stays around for a couple of weeks. You can use it as a backup plan. And then, of course, I also record it locally just in case there's something really awful on the internet today, as there has been in the past. So our questions are inspired and, like today's, directly taken from posts you put on the community. So if you've got a question today that goes beyond approval summarizers or a little bit of jelly, we will be talking about that. Please post them to the community at community.servicenow.com. A few of you have reached out to me on LinkedIn. I appreciate that very much, but I generally don't answer technical questions there. Someone wanted to know about localization on a catalog item or record producer. Said, that's a great question for the community. There are thousands of people out there that are eager to help, looking to assist, grow their own knowledge. I go, that's a great question. I want to dig in deeper to that. Okay, maybe I'm the only crazy one who does that, but no, I'm not. There's lots of great people out there. Good morning to everybody. Any plans on a portal series? Plans, yes, but probably won't make it. We're going to focus more on, I will be doing episodes on this, on Service Portal and widgets. In fact, I've got one planned in the next few weeks. So stick with me on that. I've got lots of plans for pieces, but I'm not going to be doing a formal series on Service Portal. That information is already out there, pretty well covered. I'll be doing bits and pieces as I learn them and as I discover them, and I think they'll be helpful for you. But we really want to focus on the Now experience going forward. And if you didn't catch it, on the 18th, we had a great Tech Now episode. Go over to, I don't have a link for Tech Now. Shame on me. bit.ly/ServiceNow-TechNow, and you'll get a whole series of that. Episode 78, we had a great discussion with Wolf. He went through some basics on how to build a widget and get data from the server. So, not a widget, a component. So you're already still stuck in the idea. Portal series and data stream on Flow Designer for Backlog. I do have an entire series coming up on integrations. Everything from easy import to guided app creator to import sets and integration hub. That's coming. So that is in production right now. Look for that coming up. Hopefully the first block of them will be released in September. So I've got to get finalization on scripting that. I am feverishly working on that. That is my project that I'm working on when I'm not working on these projects. So looking forward to giving a good comprehensive view on integrations. All right, let's continue on. We kind of got stuck on the community, but that's where everything will be posted. The developer portal is where you're going to find a lot of the videos that I did in the past for Builders No Code series. You can get a free personal developer instance. All the APIs are there. I'm referencing this on a daily basis. It's so chock full of information. If you're not part of the developer community, please go do so. and connect up with others under the Connect. There's events that are listed. We've got 3 developer meetups happening this week. I believe it was Utah, Minneapolis, and Tampa Bay. So those will be happening in the US. There are others happening around the world. So check it out. If you want to get more information on that, you can either look under the Connect, or if you want to sign up for one and become part of that chapter and then get notified when they actually do their meetups, well, that's over at meetup.com, where we've got just dozens and dozens of chapters around the world. Some of them are meeting more frequently than others, so if you want, reach out to the meetup organizer and say, when is the next meeting, if you don't see it on the calendar today. Very encouraged that many of you are doing this, and I look forward to meeting all of you. I should be able to make about two and a half of these this week out of those 3. So I like being able to attend these. If this was a normal work week, it would be very difficult for me to hop and visit all 3 of those and still produce this type of content. So go to meetup.com/pro/ServiceNow Dev program and become part of that. We are still running the Tell Us About Your App program, so go over to bit.ly/Tell Us About Your App. And for every application you've built, tell us about it. Give us a little insight. Tell us what you've built. We will donate $50 to the UN COVID-19 Relief and Recovery Fund. You see there up to 5 times, so you can get up to $250 nominated and feel like you're doing something to help the world be a little bit better place in these crazy times. Very much appreciated. We also still have the bit still going, and everybody's been subscribing and downloading and listening. Thank you very much. Hope you enjoyed the conversation last week with Dave Slusher about Flow Designer and Integration Hub concepts, the new features that have come out, new capabilities that have come out in Paris. We've got that discussion that dropped on the 19th, and bonus content coming out this week. I'm not going to spoil it for you. All right, if you go to the blog, the community portal, and you look under Connect, it's on the events. You'll know what's coming out on the 26th. That's where I list it. If you want to see what's coming out in future episodes, bonus episode. It's normally every other Wednesday. Well, this is the off week, and I wanted to put this in case you missed the webinar with me and David Liu. Oops, spoiler alert. Any one of those sound effects that says, hey, spoiler alert. How to move applications from one instance to another would be another nice topic. Great. Keep suggesting the topics. In fact, I will try to pull them out of the chat. Thank you very much. Drop me an email or send me a message on LinkedIn or something, because I may forget between now and then. I love your ideas. These are awesome. Actually, there is a Tech Now episode. Jeremy did this. Oh, when was that? Look in the Tech Now episode list. I think it's called Move It. And it tells you the different ways to move data and application changes from one instance to another, whether it's Git or the app repo or update sets. Lots of great information in there about how to do that. So I think we've already covered that. I don't know if I'll be doing that on this episode particularly, because Jeremy did such a wonderful job with that. So anyway, breakpoint, audio discussions, no update sets, no PowerPoint, no demos, just great open discussion between a couple of friends. Go find that over at the bit.ly link you see there. Continuing on, our next Tech Now, since I've already mentioned that a couple of times, our next Tech Now is going to be on September 15th with Jiv and Jot talking about upgrades. Paris is in early access. That's going to be about the time when it's generally available, and you'll want to start thinking about upgrades. There are some wonderful new upgrade tools in Paris that you'll want to take advantage of, and we're going to showcase them for you on this episode of Tech Now. Go over and register at bit.ly/TN79reg. You can find that there. All right, let's get into today's discussion. I should have flipped back to this screen only for a moment. Good morning. Was just reading your loaner request application. Very nice. Thank you so much for making great content. You're very welcome. The loaner request was one of the first applications I ever made as a customer back in 2010, whatever it was. And it's worked out very well. If you've taken the application developer course, I believe they're still using that as the lab exercise, full of great examples. So it covers a lot of concepts that you need to build your typical application. Let's go to my personal developer instance, and we're talking today about approval summarizers. Let me give you a quick example of what an approval summarizer is. You've probably seen them, and somebody said, how can we configure those? Well, if I look at an approval, I am going to take one that was set up with my demo data. You've got your basic information here at the top. Howard Johnson is approving it. It's requested for this particular change request. And down here is this form layout. Ooh, hey, there's some stuff in there. Okay, looks like similar typical form. And it usually starts out with summary of item being approved. This is for the benefit of the approver. So they get details about what they're approving. Well, sometimes you don't always see what you want. And there are custom ways to do this, and there's two basic methods. I thought there was one. The documents only tell you about one. I discovered an easy second way. Let me look at another one, like a request. Here's a request. And sometimes when you're approving an entire request, you want to know what request items are on there. Now you can send this out in email, of course, but people will say, I didn't get the email. Well, you can steer them back to this page, or they'll click the link to the approval and get back here. And you say, this one doesn't have that form down below the UI actions. It's got this embedded piece here, summary of request item being approved. I think I may have messed with this a little bit. It's supposed to be down below. So forgive me, this instance may be in a little bit of a different state in certain cases. So you can see it's got a nice list layout. You've got the items, you know, the amounts. They can come up here and say, no, I want to deny just this request. There's some custom stuff going on here, but it's still all part of that form. So what is a summarizer? Well, there's two ways to show that. Let me show you another one on a custom table that I did called, hey, the loaner request, right? Here it is down at the bottom, and it shows the process flow formatter. It's got what you'll notice is by default, it's taking that top section, what I call section 0. Go back and watch the video on the data model and the form layouts and the list layouts, all that stuff that I did a couple of months ago. But this is what I call section 0. It is the top part of the document, top part of the form layout. There it is again. If it doesn't have something identified specifically, it will use this top part. Well, you don't necessarily want to take something and go, well, you know, there's the field down here of stats. When was it opened or updated? And throw that up there, because then your top section starts to become a little cluttered and people are scrolling to get to the fields. Good practice, always put what's very important at the top and then use tabs or sections to put that secondary information. Okay? If you've got something that's really important but still secondary information, you can make it the first tab. This shortens up the forms. I've got a number of these on personal projects that I have to go back and say, this form is getting really long. Group things together as they matter. Okay, there's your tip of the day. So let's take a look at this. What if I wanted to make a shorter version of this? Maybe the approver doesn't really care about who the assignment group or who the assigned to is. That's not important, is it? Not for an approver. Well, easy step one, and this is the one that I recommend you look at first, is go to either configure form design or form layout. I'm going to go to form design just because it gives me a drag and drop pretty quick for what I'm doing here today. Go to form design, and there is a specially named form view. Views are a way of presenting this in different cases. There's one called ESS, labeled self-service. There's one called ITIL. There's different views for different personas or different places. There is a special one called approval. Okay? It's not on here right now. All I've got is default and self-service. So first of all, I need to get to the right scope because I'm in global. So let's go to my loaner request scope. How did I know? It was all grayed out. Now, if I go to configure form design, does non-enrolled users see the top section? Well, they should if a default view is in place and it's not using any special ACLs or view rules or something to do that. So let's create a new view. I can do that here by saying new view called approval, and it made a copy of all of the fields and layouts and order and all of that stuff. For this view, I'm going to take out this section, and let's just go with that example that I said before. Let's take out assignment group and assign to, and all these other sections really don't apply because the summarizer is just showing you this top one. When I save that, saves all that lovely configuration. I now have, if I do a reload form, it will show here without reloading. Nope, got to reload. Reload that form, and now I have an approval view. Hooray, it's a very simplistic, I don't expect too many people to actually get here and do that, but that view, go back to my default view, I like that, it's got lots of good information. And I hop over to approvals, look at the approval for this loaner request. Now, look, no more assignment group, no more process flow formatter. Creating an approval view is a very easy way to take the default fields and layout and make your own layout specifically for this approval summarizer. That's plan A. Okay? Use that one 99% of the time. Plan B gets in a little deeper. It's quite a bit more involved. And I invite you to check out the links I have on this episode in the description on YouTube or on the links in the community if you're watching it there. And there is a page called Summarizers in the Docs. I just search Docs for Summarizer. There it is. Plunk. We're currently using Paris, so I pull that up. And it says approval summarizers are stored in a macro table. From the left navigation, you go to UI macros, and the naming convention follows this: approval underscore summarizer underscore table name. Now, I have not been successful to get this to work on a scoped table for whatever reason. But that's why I went and looked a little harder and said, I wonder if. That's how I found out that view thing worked. I said, I wonder if there's a view called approval, and tried that. And it worked. So that's what I use for my custom tables. Global tables, another case. You can use this UI macro capability and put that in there. So if it's on the change request, the UI macro will be called approval summarizer with the underscores in there. Approval summarizer change request, or approval summarizer incident, approval summarizer SC rec item. You get the idea. Each summarizer is written in Jelly script, so I put up a big yellow warning flag. This is all about Jelly. If you don't know how to program in Jelly, it is one of the underlying languages that we support for doing forms and layout in the classic standard platform UI. Not pretty, it's powerful, but it's a bit of a legacy thing. It came along in the late 90s, early 2000s, and it's the templating language that we used for a lot of the classic UI. But not easy to find the skill set for that. If you want to learn more information, I've got a 3-part series. It was episode 1, 2, and 3 of Tech Now. Seem to be referencing that, but as I create more content, I'm going to be referencing that content because there's no point in doing it over again. That was back in 2013, still remains some of the most popular videos I've ever done for ServiceNow, and happy that it's out there. A lot of people have referenced it. So you can get started, understand what UI macros are and UI pages and how to do all this cool stuff in Jelly. Some of you have done that. But keep in mind, the Jelly code doesn't work in Service Portal and it doesn't work in Workspace. So we've migrated technologies. But this is a possibility if you want to create your own custom summarizer like you saw on the one for the request. Let's go take a look at that. Close out that, and they are under UI macros. We saw that the one that was for the request item was a bit special. So system UI, UI macros. Had a couple of questions come on. Does non-role, we already did that. Just naming a view, how does it get updated in the summarizer? The summarizer already knows. There's an interesting thing that happens. I'll show you. So if you look for name starts with approval, there's one called approval summarizer, there's one called approval summarizer default, and then there's these ones with the names. SC request item, SC task. Get the idea. In there it says, hey, if you don't have one specific to this table, goes and looks, says, oh, SC request, I'll use that one. if it's actually at the bottom of that form. And apologies again, I think I may have messed up my form a little bit. Oops, sorry for jumping around. But let's go back to the approvals before I dig in and look at the jelly code. Because if I look at the form layout here, there's my simple request that I have, and it's got a form layout. If I look at the form layout, it has in here an approval summarizer. There is a formatter. UI macros are often closely tied with a formatter. And the job of the formatter is to make a UI macro available to place on a form. It does a couple of other things, but if you look down in the list, you'll see some other formatters like contextual search result, the activities where you have comments and work notes and attachments, and all of that is a formatter. Okay. It's a UI macro that's put into a formatter. Some of these are available for you to look at. So if I look at the UI macros that I saw before, now let's go to the history. That was faster. Macros name starts with approval. I should have, under System UI formatters, maybe something that says approval summarizer. There it is. That's how we got that name in there. They're kind of fun. If you've ever wanted to make like a checklist or something, a reminder, a quick UI macro is a good way to put that in there. Because annotations can be turned off, but UI macros can't. I used a UI macro in the Jeopardy game that I made a couple of years ago for Knowledge that went through and checked the records because it was checking a lot of related information, and I wanted a checklist that says, hey, you need 3 of these and 30 of those and 1 of these, and that's not set. And as these things would turn on, they would turn green as the conditions were satisfied, and when all of them were green, you were allowed to play the game. So there was a nice way to do that. That being said, I needed to make a UI macro, which included some jelly code, some JavaScript code, and then I linked it with a formatter and then put it on the form. So now I've got a nice little formatter on there. That's a bit of a sidetrack on there about approval summarizer, but in here, it really just says, what is the name of your UI macro? And it's the name of the UI macro.xml. It is a type formatter, and on we go. Let's go back to global so we can actually see some of these things. I go back to macros, formatters, macros, macro, there it is. Can you please point me to the video where you have configured the condition builder in a lookup table and reference that condition in the parent table? It's going to be one of the recent ones. I think it was April or May of this year in this series. So if you find the playlist for community live stream, you'll find one called condition fields. I don't have the link on me offhand, and I don't want to stop talking to stop and look up a link for you. But if you don't find it, say in an hour or so, or somebody doesn't contribute it to the community chat, hit me up. I'll find it for you. All right. Here's my approval summarizer, and in here is some jelly code. Again, it's not pretty. You'll recognize some of it as JavaScript, and it says, do you have a macro? If you don't, then I'm going to use that, and I'll use the default approval summarizer. I'm not going to go through all the logic in here because it does get a little bit more convoluted than I've got. Like I said, it took 3 episodes to cover this stuff. This is the default summarizer, which goes and gets a whole bunch of parameters and figures out what form you're on and view and does the list layout or the form layout for you and tells you all that good stuff. So it's not a trivial matter. However, if I've got one on my global table called simple request, view simple request.list. Ooh, view simple something. Simple Rex, there it is. I've got one task here. It's got a very simple, this is the default task layout. Should look familiar if you've ever extended the task table. I haven't done anything to this form layout. We should, just for fun. Let's say, configure this form layout, create a new view. We'll do this one through form layout this time. Say I want a new view called approval. Do the same trick we did before, just to show you a different way of doing this. Take out the work notes, the description, the short description. Need to take out the end split, but make a simpler view for approval. Okay, default view is still intact. Go back to approvals and find my simple request. There it is, and I should see a nice simplified version. No short description, no work notes, no nothing. Easy, right? That's the easy way. I like that. If I wanted to override that with a UI macro, then I would go to my macros and create one called approval summarizer underscore table name. So this one is called approval summarizer, your U simple rec. Got to have the table name in there. And I am simply going to put in div hello world. Nothing fancy. A little bit of HTML. I'm not going to put in any jelly or anything else. Submit that, and now system should recognize, should being the key word, everything's going well here, and it says there's my hello world, only because I think I jacked up this form and put it in a funny place, because my approval form layout is not the standard one that it should be. I thought it would work well down here. Still putting it there. It's above the buttons. I forgot how I got it below the buttons or above the buttons, but it's supposed to recognize that and say item being approved, and there's the UI macro. But I was experimenting when I was building the content for this episode. So now you can see if you wanted to get more involved with Jelly, you could go out and get other records or get related information and pull this together in a nicely formatted style and create your own approval summarizer. Again, this wasn't working too well for me with a scope table, for example, X loaner request. Go try that just for the fun of it. Remember, my approval view had a couple of fields missing. So if I go back to my approvals and try one of the loaners, it should look like we had it a few minutes ago. Ta-da! And if I go to create a new macro called approval. Now, this one I would probably want to do in the scope. Let me try it both ways. I don't know if it's going to prefix it and the API changes or whatnot. So let's go approval summarizer under X owner request. Okay, approve. Let's put a div tag in there just for being good citizens today. Approval for loaner item, just to see if it's working. There's the close of my div. I'm not sure if it was the UI macro was in the wrong scope or the table is in a different scope that made it a mess. Hey, look, approval for a loaner item. Okay, so it will work, but that was the case where, back to my rows, let's try putting the loaner request. This is in global, see, and I may not want my summarizer in a different scope than my application because it would make it difficult to distribute the application with somebody else. Let's take that out. Delete. Go check, make sure that we didn't mess anything up. And I include attachments from a rec for the approval to review. You'd have to do that through the Jelly. You'd have to go and query the sys attachment table, find out what the attachments are, that kind of stuff. So it will involve a little bit of JavaScript and Jelly code in your approval summarizer. But yes, it can be done, Jason. Replicating out-of-box UI macro is always best practice. Yes, it is, if I wanted something that was out of the box. But I don't want any, I don't need the list of request items and whatnot, but it does provide some good examples. Always, when you've got questions about how do I do something, go look for out-of-box examples that can lead you in the right direction. That was one of the earliest lessons I learned in my first sysadmin class back in 2008, and it's proved useful when I'm doing this reverse engineering, saying, has anybody else ever done this? Do we see an example of that somewhere else in the code? And the code search is really nice in Studio for doing that. The, where am I going? Oh, I deleted that. So let's go to my loaner scope. Loaner request, there it is. I just want to make sure that the approval for that is back to the standard form. There it is. Yay. Let's go create a new UI macro. Same name as before. Approval summarizer. And here's where I think it goes off. Request. In a scoped application, just like if you have a scoped script include, a scoped scripted REST API, watch week's episode, it changes the API name. And I think that's where the global default approval summarizer is getting confused. It's looking specifically for approval under summarizer under table name. This is not the name anymore because it's got the scope out here messing it up. X loaner approval summarizer, X loaner request. That's not helpful, but let's try it anyway. Div scoped approval for loaner item. API name has changed because it needs to be scoped so you could have multiple UI macros in different scopes. It's part of the scope collision thing like properties or script includes that helps keep you from getting in trouble. And you can see the approval has not been affected. It's not picking that one up. That default approval summarizer goes, nope, just going to use the normal view. Do you have an approval view? If you don't have that, then I'll use the default view. So that's where it's getting that information. Hope that clarifies the hierarchy of how things are done. If you have a table-specific approval summarizer with the API name, approval under summarizer underscore table name, it will use that first. If you don't have that, and of course that requires a lot of skill and effort and finesse to build that out in Jelly, but you can do that. That gives you the ultimate flexibility, ultimate power. If you don't have that, it will then default to look for an approval view for that form or for that table. If you don't have an approval view, it will use the top section of the default view. So that's pretty much everything there is to know. Interestingly enough, there's nothing about the view part of this in the documentation. That's what I found stunning. Is just a little random experimentation went, oh, hey, how'd that work? And why does it work? Well, why it works, or how did it work, I discovered by going through some of that Jelly code and saying, what are you looking for? What are you doing in here? What happens if I don't have that? That's how it works. And allows you a little bit more flexibility to use something other than the default view in the approval summarizer. It seems similar to the sys pop-up view for reference field in the form. Very similar, yep. If you define a view for that pop-up, it will be there. Otherwise, it will use the top section. Nothing about Jelly or UI macros in the sys reference pop-up. So good information. Maybe we should do that in the future too. I haven't talked about sys pop-up, but I did views not too long ago, so go check them out. They're under the list and form data model episode, I believe. Looking quickly through questions. Can you please point me to the video? No, we already got that. Can we modify the UI out-of-box macros? Yes, you can modify the out-of-the-box UI macros, but you're going to have to address them as potential skip changes in the future. So, like I said, best practice is to copy the ones that you've already got. If you want, you can deactivate the out-of-box ones. There's two philosophies of thinking when it comes to, this is just a little bonus content since I've got a few minutes, but when you modify something that we provide you, maybe it's a UI macro. Let's say we'll go with the UI macro. If you modify that, the one that we give you, it will be flagged in the next update and say, hey, you've modified this. Do you want to keep the changes? Do you want to revert to baseline? What do you want to do? Maybe it wasn't even you. Maybe it was one of your predecessors 10 years ago that made these changes, and you just want to know about it because ServiceNow is now trying to upgrade that, give you new functionality. That's a good thing, in my opinion. You want to know that conflict existed. So there's nothing that says do not modify the out-of-the-box components because you may want that reminder. You may want to consciously say, we acknowledge this, we're moving on. We're sticking with our functionality. Or we would like to revert this and take a look at what ServiceNow has done that potentially supplants or supersedes our technology, our implementation to make this better. Okay, that's one way. The other way is if you want to silently do this, you make a copy out of the box and you can deactivate the one that we provided. So now you've got a copy, you can modify your own copy, leaving the other one intact. Depending on what it is, you may want to deactivate or it may just override by itself. You got to look at the functionality that happens there. Then you're not impacting any upgrades. However, if ServiceNow upgrades the UI macro, the script include, the business rule, whatever you copied, you're still going to be using your version and you may be missing out on functionality that's coming along. So you don't have as much work to do on upgrades, but you may be missing out. So there's two ways to look at that. Talk about that with your architecture team. Talk about that with your system ServiceNow program team, whoever's in your organization that oversees the way things are changed and made. Have that plan of how are we going to manage these changes in the future? Because you may in fact gain value out of being annoyed on every upgrade just to be aware that something was upgraded. And if it's the same 60 things every release is where you go, yeah, we know, we're going to stick with our own. We're going to use our own macro. We're going to use our own UI action. We're going to do our own thing on this. Take a look at what the out-of-the-box record looks like anyway, because you can have that side-by-side comparison and go, oh, look, there's a whole new role involved with this that we didn't know about. We probably want to either adopt that, merge it, revert, whatever you want to do. So deactivate and copy is always my way to go. That's one way to go. But in recent years, I've been reevaluating that practice and saying, maybe not, because you could be missing out on several things that are coming along. We had a customer that had purchased performance analytics early on and made a lot of copies of things. And as performance analytics matured and we got more functionality, they were not getting that because they were still using their copy of this. And they really looked back and went, what's going on? I'm reading about all these features in Geneva or Jakarta or whatever it was, saying, we're not seeing that. And it was because they did the copy thing instead of the modify out of box thing. So there you go. That is my message for today. I really appreciate everybody joining me. It has been a treat hanging out with friends. Put it on your calendars, Mondays and Thursdays, 2 p.m. UTC. That would be 10 a.m. in New York. It would be 3 p.m. in London, 5 p.m. in Moscow, 6 p.m. in Dubai, no, something like that. 7:30 p.m. in India. Lots of different places you could look that have time zones figured out from UTC. Not GMT, not British summertime. Things will change in the fall. I'll give you an updated schedule on that. So that's why I use UTC. It doesn't change, and I don't change, and I don't have to do any math. But unfortunately, the people who do switch their clocks in the fall and spring, or twice a year, they do. Apologies for that. Write your congressman or state representative if you want to get out of that. Until next time. Hey, join me next time. We will be talking about, let me get down here to my notes. Where is it? Thursday is going to be a very special episode. We are going to be talking with some of our internal solution consultants about a hackathon we recently did and some of the things they built in Integration Hub and how it impacts you, where you can find this information, talking about the benefit and how they did it. This is the first episode of Community Livestream in almost 3 years where I'm going to have some guests on. So fingers crossed on the technical issues on that one too. I look forward to talking to you again on Thursday for that very special episode. I'll have that socialized probably tomorrow morning so you can start putting that on your calendar. But Thursday, 2 p.m. UTC, I will talk to you again real soon. Till then, take care. Bye.